Shalom, peace, and blessings. Welcome to the Fourth Angels Learning Center. Today, we're going to be continuing our study on the spiritual warfare, specifically putting on the whole armor of Yah. And what does that really mean? We talked about the mind, girding the loins of the mind with truth. And we talked about what that meant when we read over 1 Peter chapter 1, looking at verse 12 to 15, which was a very, very deep perspective. I didn't even think it was going to take that long, but because there's so much detail that we need to make sure that we're understanding and meditating on, we're going to divide each piece. And no matter how short it is, we're going to just make sure that we grasp what does it mean to put on each element of the armor of Yah. Now, we talked about the armor of Yah being put on to protect us from the tricks and the cunning craftiness of and the cunning crafty deceptions of the devil. So we looked at what do we have to do in order not to be affected by his tricks. He's not going to just blatantly come out and be like, oh, I put a curse on you, or oh no, I'm demon possessed. This is how he comes out after the people of Yah. That is how he goes after the people in the world through witches and all of this stuff. But the people of Yah is not dismayed in this way. Like, we don't get carried away by somebody else giving their life to the enemy. That has no bearing on me. You know, just as Balaam tried to curse the children of Israel and could not curse the children of Israel because they were walking in righteousness, we ought to make sure we dedicating ourselves. We need to focus on our walk in order to maintain our protection with Yah. The only way that Yah will not protect us is if we purposely walk away from him in transgression. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to the second element. To gird your mind with truth is to hold the whole being, the whole character, the whole lifestyle together. Everything has to be filtered through the word of Yah. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yah. So what is the next element? The next element is talking about the breastplate. So let's get to it. Breastplate of righteousness. Ephesians chapter 6. So it starts with verse 4. We did talk about the girding of about with the loins of the truth. If you have not checked it out, please feel free to go back and check out the previous video or all the previous videos on spiritual warfare. So we talked about that and the focus on the mind. Now, the breastplate of righteousness. What is this talking about? Now, again, I wanted to remind everybody, this is not talking about putting anything on your outside physical body. This is not telling you to do anything on your physical physically do something outwardly. Those things definitely are manifested naturally, but this is to gird your mind. So the breastplate of righteousness is a different aspect of your mind. What aspect is that? Of course, everybody understands that a breastplate blocks the heart. The breastplate blocks the heart. Let's look at a few verses, or covers or protects the heart. Let me say it that way rather than block. Protect the heart. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, looking at verse 8, it says, let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and on the helmet of the hope of salvation. We're not gonna talk about that aspect yet, but the breastplate of faith and love. Faith and love has to be incorporated in the heart. Why? Because many times we associate the heart with faith and love, but we associate the heart with feelings. And this is a very incorrect perspective on the heart. The heart has nothing to do with feelings. Like, it's not talking about your feelings, but it's talking about your will, your desires. Now, your feelings can also affect your desire, which is why it needs to be guarded with righteousness. It needs to be guarded with righteousness because your belief and your affection can be affected by allowing your emotions to control your desires. Your desires has to be based off what is right. Your desire has to be based off of what is true. And your faith and your love has to be connected to what is righteous and what is true. And so faith and love is like a breastplate to protect your desire from straying away from righteousness. Why? Faith is we're going to talk about that as well. Of course, the breastplate blocking or protecting your desire is very important, but the shield of faith is also talking about similar elements. So we're not going to emphasize on that. Love. Now, love is not just a feeling, it's a desire, it's an affection, right? It's a manifestation of a desire. And that manifestation and that love has to be protected by righteousness. Your love has to be grounded in righteousness. Let's look at a few more verses. Isaiah 59. Isaiah 59, looking at verse 16 and 17. Look at what it says here. And he saw that there was no man, and he wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore, his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness sustained him. You see, that's righteousness is sustaining him, holding him together, supporting him. It says, for he put on the breastplate of righteousness, or righteousness as a breastplate. I want us to really think about this, because now we get to clearly see the metaphoric language, and we're not just thinking about an actual armor and just leaving it at that. We need to put it on. Again, we need to put it on. Just as Isaiah says we need to put it on, Paul says we need to put it on. There's no different message. And then it talks about the helmet of salvation upon his head, and it talks about the garments of vengeance of clothing was clad with zeal as a cloak. Now, the garments is talking about the characteristics which we can see manifested in our actions. And this Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians, I believe, chapter 10. But we're going to focus on the breastplate, and we'll get to the garments when we get to the helmet. So it says, put on the righteousness as a breastplate. Very important. Love, right? Love, to love Yah with all your heart, your mind, your soul, right? Your strength. To love him is to keep his commandments. To love him is to desire him. I come to do your will. I delight to do your will, oh Yah. Let's look at a few more verses just to collect the view or the perspective of putting on righteousness. It says, he that walked uprightly and works righteousness and speaks the truth in his heart. Let's look at verse 1. This is what the context of that is. Who is going to stay in your tabernacle? Who shall dwell in your holy hill? A person who is walking uprightly, that works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart, right? His heart is upright and righteous. His heart is filled with a desire to do what is right. It is not only good to do what is right, but to desire to do what is right is more important. More important. Sometimes it's, we look so much at the action that we lose sight that Yah is looking at the heart. Okay? Yah desires us to obey, but he desires us to obey from the heart. He desires us to fear him and keep his commandments. Not just keep his commandments, but to fear him. That our hearts is desiring him. Our will is yearning after him. There's a psalm that talk about that. Talking about as the deer, right? There's a song. As the deer panteth, so my soul panteth after you. This is how Yah wants us to be protected. He wants righteousness to protect our love. He wants our love to manifest righteousness. And he does not want those two elements to separate. Many times we look at love, and sometimes we spoil our kids and say we love them. But that's not righteous. We're gonna go to that in a second. I want to look at this verse real quick. Psalms 37, looking at verse 31. And it says, the law of his Elohim is in his heart, so none of his steps will slide. And it says, the wicked watches the righteous and looks to slay him. So it's interesting. Let's look at verse 30. Well, let's look at verse 29 and how it talks about righteousness and how that incorporates the law being in your heart, where the breastplate covers. It says, the righteous shall inherit the land and dwell in it forever. The mouth of the righteous speaks wisdom, and his tongue talks of judgment. The law of Elohim is in the heart, none shall of his steps shall slide. The law is what protects your love. If you love me, keep my commandments, right? Love and commandments has to be intertwined. Love, John says, if you say you love me and keep not my commandments, you're a liar. Love and law is intertwined. Righteousness stems from loving the law. Oh, how I love thy law, right? This is what David says in the book of Psalms many times. Oh, how I love thy law. And I may not slip from your word. It's so important for us to understand the desire that we ought to direct to the words of Yah. Man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of his mouth. There has to be a level of love for what is true, a level of love of what is right. Verse 8, I delight to do your will, O my Elohim. Your law is within my heart. So you see, there cannot be a separation of love and law, love and righteousness. I wanted to point this out before about loving. Can you love your children and not correct them? Can you love your children and spoil them? Can you love your children and allow them to not be, to get away with wicked actions or wicked behavior? You know, can I love my brother and not tell him he's wrong? Can I love my brother and not tell him the right way to walk? Can I love my brother and tell him not to repent, for the kingdom is at hand? You see what I'm saying? So love and righteousness has to be connected, or if it's disconnected, your breastplate will unravel and your heart will be destroyed. You will get attacked. You will get an arrow right to the heart from the enemy, because we have allowed truth and righteousness not to block the love that we have. It has to protect the love that we have for the law. I want to show two more verses, one in Isaiah 51. And then I believe there's a verse I'm going to show from Thessalonians. Isaiah 51, looking at verse 7, it says, hearken unto me, you that know righteousness, right? The people in whose heart is my law. So those who have the law in their heart have righteousness covering that heart as well, guarding the love, guarding your desire. It says, fear ye not the reproach of men. You see that? Men, it doesn't matter how men make you feel. It doesn't matter how your heart cannot fail because men reproach you. It says here, neither be afraid of their revilings. It says, for the moth shall eat them up like a garment, and the worm shall eat them up like wool. But my righteousness shall be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. Very important for us to understand. Now, what is going to cause us? What is going to cause our breastplate, the breastplate, to be removed, to cause our hearts to lose love for Yah's law, to lose love for Yah's truth, to lose desire for his righteousness? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Look at what it says here. Those who are going to be deceived. It talks about that there's a coming and there's a working of the adversary with all power and signs and lying wonders. It says in verse 10, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, this power or this spirit is coming with all deceivableness, right? To deceive you, just like what we read in Ephesians 6, the wiles of the devil, the trickery, the deceptions of the devil. It says, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, right? People who perish are going to have deceived. They're going to be deceived away from righteousness. It says, because they received not what? The love of the truth. They did not allow righteousness. They did not allow the law to guard their love. They did not allow their love to center around Yah's word and his truth and his law and his righteousness. So it says here that the ones that will be deceived out of righteousness is because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. Because they don't love the truth, for this reason, Elohim will send them strong delusions that they should believe a lie. And then look what it says. That they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So the breastplate of righteousness is removed because they had pleasure in unrighteousness. Why? Because their love wasn't for the truth. Their love was for deception. Their love was for something other than the truth, the lie. So Yah gave them over to their lie. We have to understand that the mind is so powerful that it's not just an intellect aspect, but it's also a love aspect. It's also a desire. Yah wants your desires as well. If he doesn't have your desire, then you doing some rules is not showing him anything. It's not showing him anything. Yah has always wanted Israel's heart. Let me show you from Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 20, I believe it's 29. Deuteronomy chapter 20. Is it 29? Oh, hold on 1 second. Deuteronomy chapter 20. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh, okay. So I had it backwards. It wasn't Deuteronomy 29:5. It was Deuteronomy 5:29, but not 29. It was, I think it's before 29. So Yah is talking to him, talking to Israel, giving them his commandments, reminding them about the commandments, reminding them about the flaws that their forefathers, that their parents made in the wilderness. And look at what it says in verse 28. It says, and Yahuwah heard the voice of the words when you spoke to me, and Yahuwah said to me, I heard the voice of the words of this people when they spoke unto you, and they have well said that all that they have spoken. And then he says that they spoke well, right? They spoke well. But he says, oh, that there was such a heart in them that they would fear me and keep my commandments always, that it might be well with them and with their children forever. You see that? A heart in them. Oh, that there was a heart in them that they would fear me and keep my commandments. What did they just do? Let's look at this real quick. What did the people of Israel just do? They literally just spoke to Yah. Literally just spoke to Yah. Well, what did they say? Let me see if I can pull that up. Right here. Verse 27. They tell Moses, they say, go near, hear everything that Yah, your Elohim, shall say. Speak it to us, all that Yahuwah Elohim shall say. And it says, and we will hear it, and we will do it. Yah says that they have well spoken, right? They said the correct words, but oh, that there was such a heart in them that they would fear me. You see, they didn't have the heart. They didn't have the breastplate of righteousness on. They spoke, but they didn't have the breastplate of righteousness on. Another aspect of the breastplate of righteousness is this symbolism that is usually spoken about here. Let me see if I can find it. Hmm. Let me see. Look what he says here. Yahuwah your Elohim will circumcise your heart. He will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children to love Yahuwah your Elohim, to love him with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live. He will circumcise your heart. You have to allow him to do these things. If you don't allow him to do these things, you cannot be equipped. When he circumcises your heart, you have to guard those things with righteousness, with the law. The law is placed in your heart, the love of the law. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, those who are deceived are because they did not place their love on the truth. They placed their love on the lie. We need to guard our love and affection with righteousness. We have to have more of a desire and a love for righteousness than we do for anything else. It's not going to work. You won't be able to keep the breastplate. Now, if the breastplate is removed, then the enemy will work on not only getting your intellect, but using your desire and your love to redirect it to something else. So that way he can also take the helmet off, so he can take the shield off, so he can take he's not trying to take one piece of this armor off. He's trying to take everything off. So we have to understand that the breastplate of righteousness is something that you put on. And if you do not put it on correctly, then the love that you're supposed to have for Yah and his righteousness and his law and his word will go to something else. The love that you're supposed to have for the truth is going to go towards a lie, and you will be deceived and you will lose everything. So I hope that this is clear. I hope that this warning is clear. And I praise Yah. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us an email, and we'll be happy to respond to those questions in the following videos. Shalom.